All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our, this is the fourth chat
Oh,
today. No, the fifth chat today. This is number 5. We've got
gotta
one
keep
more
the
after
energy up.
this, but this is one of my favorites, folks. I have been looking forward to this one for weeks because Katie, this lady, she's awesome. You're going to love Katie. Let me tell you about her real quick. And I'll remind you all, put your questions over here. There's a questions tab. There's a comments tab. It doesn't matter. We're watching both. But Katie's a Web3 writer, a thought leader, and a hands-on coach conducting emerging tech workshops. Read AI, and one-to-one coaching
Yeah.
series with industry leaders, executives, and public figures inside and outside of Silicon Valley in the tech industry. And her current passion is generative AI, like
hmm
ChatGPT. We will talk about that, I am sure, and how it's going to fundamentally change you, your agency, marketing, humanity, life as we know it.
All of it.
Everything's changing. This lady's been with Nickelodeon, Oxygen Media, ESPN, X Games, Facebook Reality Labs, Meta, and their product experimentation team. And she writes, discusses, and teaches others how to use these new technologies to meet their business and their life goals, which is what I personally want to get out of this is,
Yeah.
how are my life
Personal
goals going to be
too.
impacted by AI? So how you doing?
Great. And thanks for that intro. I like to say, there's so many people I'm a coach, I'm a consultant. This is the first time I've been in this. I've been 2 decades working at big media and then big tech, if you want to put big in front of everything. And what I'm doing now with coaching is basically what I did internally when it came to we need to up our game with mobile applications. I mean, I'm old, so like I've been around since we had to convince people that mobile was a thing and we were versioning platforms. And then social, that was like my big sort of thing internally with ESPN and Disney was pushing the use case, which seems silly now that we had to push the use case, but we did. Yeah, and then working with third parties when I came to Meta, which was Facebook then, working with developers outside the company, I got a real empathy for what it's like. And I'm assuming it's the exact same in the marketing program to be one of 100 that relies on a platform, yet sitting outside of that platform with a lack of control, right? You don't control the product development cycles and all of that. So I tried to bridge that gap. And that's sort of what I'm still doing is I want to help people get the most from generative AI and push the rest aside. If you're interested in just sort of watching what's going on in the industry, that's fine. But we don't need to make, like animated figures for gaming and stuff. Like focusing on how to get through the day is sort of where I'm at with this stuff.
Awesome. I got to pull up this quote from Daryl. He says, "I'm old," says Katie. "Hold
Yeah,
my beer," says Daryl.
I'm sitting here. This
Yeah.
is reminding me of if you think this is busy, when we had our weekly all hands, Mark Zuckerberg did like weekly all hands with the whole company for the first 5 years I was there. So that was like a really golden time. And he would sit there with thousands of people and he'd be live in front of the room and just take questions. And then he'd be
Mm.
in the chat. Like he jumps into all the internal chats when people think he's not and they're sort of busting on him or whatever, and he's there. So I'm always like, if I don't think I can handle this, I don't know how he did that.
Right, right. So let's start off by talking
Yeah.
about yesterday's panel discussion. And so,
Mm.
just a reminder to everybody watching, you've got full access for 30 days and counting to all of yesterday's sessions, including Katie's incredible panel, this
We had a good one.
fantastic discussion that
It
they
was the
had
group.
on AI. It was such a good group. You guys didn't, well, let's see, 2 of you knew each other prior to that, right?
Yeah, I knew
2
Mark,
or
and that's
3?
it.
That's it,
And I'd
right.
seen
So
the
it's not like
others'
y'all knew each
materials.
other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, such a good conversation. So it was how to drive more revenue with AI. So it wasn't necessarily in the weeds, how to be a prompt engineer or something like that. It was more high level for agencies, right? How do we actually use this technology to help grow and scale our agency? So while we're waiting for you folks to come up with questions that you
Yeah.
want to know about AI or anything like that, can you tell us about yesterday's session? What did you guys talk about? How'd that go?
Yeah, sure. So I think we had a really interesting mix of kind of old school marketing, digital marketing, and then I come from the other side. I'm used to having the agency relationships, right? So whether that's with creator agencies, marketing agencies, and that type of thing. We also had a mix of people looking at the big picture, right? Like how to set your annual goals and how to generate revenue on a large scale. And I'd say I'm kind of the opposite. I'm looking at how do we make an agenda for next week that prioritizes the right things you need to do as if you are the world's best executive assistant? I mean, that's a prompt I'm going to blog about soon, but pretend I'm the world's busiest executive and you're the world's best executive assistant. Write me an old school day-by-day itinerary for next week. What do you need to know to make this the best in the world or whatever? And then you let it guide you through just as you would. I really treat ChatGPT like an assistant, a really informed, smart assistant, or an intern,
Right.
and I'm using it to try and I'm really, really ruthlessly prioritizing practicality and making this usable. And I'm assuming a lot of people listening right now are on the higher end of your organization, meaning you get further and further away from touching the platforms. You're probably not writing tweets. And I'm sure you're like super dialed into the messaging and you're reading them all. But this is a really cool opportunity to just play with this platform. You can't break it. You don't have to do it on behalf of your agency. You can even make a new Gmail and just get your hands dirty and try things. If you mess it up, you can't mess it up. It's like having a conversation. You can't mess it up. So I'm really big on let's get step by step and like, what is the exact prompt? If you read my blog, it's supposed to be cut pastable prompts and that type of thing. So as far as like generating revenue, I am focused on that, but it would be more like, help me craft the outline of our budget for H2 using H1's budget, knowing I want to grow, right, our ad click-throughs by 10%. I mean, something really, really heavy. And then using that as my partner, like you would someone who worked for you, to ask you the smart questions, push back on bad ideas. It's not the best at pushing back, but I really imagine it's a human.
The only time it pushes back is when it says, I can't do that.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the only
I'm
pushback.
real. I don't know how else I could tell you.
Yeah, that's right. Show everybody your fingers, because then that's how we'll know
there's
you're
5
AI.
on each hand, right? I don't have the extra AI fingers.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, the other piece of this is this is the moment to be, if you want to be known for working with generative AI as an agency, there are no experts yet. It's all garbage if people are saying that. You do not have to know how to code. It's going to come back to us that we're liberal arts majors or like marketing majors and how much time and energy we spend on copywriting, right? And writing scripts. Like, we are back on top again.
English majors, this is your time.
I was an English major. I'm serious. I was so frustrated by not being able to code for the past 2 decades because I have a lot of us with creative ideas can't operate the tools. And some of the people with the tools they're not creative first. And so this just puts us, we can't do it all, but it puts us in a unique position again to really play out our visions and think big.
Well, I love that there's this dichotomy to the question of how can an agency use AI? Because on the one hand, you can use it as the owner, like you've been talking about, or the CMO, different ways to expedite the things that you're doing on and brainstorm and so on. But there's also this idea that as an agency, I can be using AI on behalf of my clients. And one of the questions today is that ethical? Should I talk about that? How should I frame that as the agency owner or the CMO of the agency, right? Who's trying to market and promote the agency to prospects? How do I talk to them and educate them about how we're using AI on their behalf and frame it in a way that they don't think that it's just cheating?
Absolutely. And I preface this all by saying, you're going to get my opinions, right? If I worked for you, this is how I would approach that question. Ethics are up to you. These lines, it really depends on your personality, how conservative versus risk-taking that you are. I tend to be a little bit more on the safe but taking chances side, almost like I worked at Disney, so how risky could it be? But I pushed them a lot on moving forward and trying new things. What I would say with generative AI is it's this tool that's sitting here. You would never feed it any proprietary client information, never. But if that is a public client, if they have a public facing brand, say that I'm working with Lululemon, okay? I'm not telling the internet Lululemon exists. It already exists. Before you worked or pitched that client, you would do your research, right? So you'd Google them, make sure that you're not missing any press releases, make sure that you know their latest lines. What did they come out with? Does the brand voice sound the same? Are they talking about new strategies? that's where this can come in handy as well. So ChatGPT, I think a lot of people know this. The knowledge base goes up to 2021. I personally believe they could go further, but that was enough freaking out for this cycle for people. So that's just something really important to keep in mind. You never want to go to ChatGPT and say, what's the latest news, right, about Lululemon? You might want to say, I literally tell it the truth. I am pitching a really large client, right? Their goals, or just give it what the pitch document was, like when they asked for proposals, or you had that conversation and they gave you the 3 things that are important. I feed those back in. Again, nothing proprietary or insidery, but they want to push into a younger demographic. They want, here is my pitch, here is my presentation, and I'll literally take a PowerPoint or a Google Slides, PDF it, and cut and paste it back in. Act as if you are the world's best marketer and optimize this before my pitch. It loves, I'm acting like this is a human, but that is how you work best with it. It seems to love goals. It seems to love deadlines. The more specific you can get, the better. And it likes to have a job. So hiring it to win the pitch, telling it you will promote it. I'm not kidding. Like, you seriously, it is very reward driven. Think what you want about that. I don't know what that means.
know, right?
But it definitely responds to treating it as you would an intern, even more blatant. Like, I'll give you a staff position if you get us this, you can really like dangle these things, and it's like great. And that'll sometimes help you with some of the guardrails they put in place just to make sure you're not getting the really generic stuff that'll spit out at you.
That's fascinating. And that's definitely less of the tool mindset, because a lot of the folks who are talking about AI and promoting the use of AI right now, that they say use it like a tool, use it like a tool, use it like a tool. Well, I think
my advice is a little different.
It is. It's very different, right? I'm not talking to my shovel when I take it out front.
No, you're not. And this is just, I'm really fascinated with psychology and sociology and how we act in groups and all of these things. And I was listening, there's a book that I'm listening to, an audiobook, and it's all about human psychology and how we interact with machines. Why we put faces on robots that don't need faces. And this woman tells a story about, she got from Japan this little AI dog, and she lives alone and has no pets or whatever, and never cared about dogs. And in 2 weeks, she was like, what are you trying to do? What are you would not talk to your computer like that. She felt bad turning it off when she left the house. I'd say that, look, and this is where everyone has to have their own comfort level and opinion. I don't see what is harmed by me acting and pretending in my mind like this is someone on my staff. My staff tends to be just me. So it's really helpful even for my own psyche to say, now I'm a team of 2. And pretend I have this person working with me, and that is optimizing everything, is using it to brainstorm with me, not in my place, not do the work for me. Maybe do the grunt work for me. But generating new ideas. If you just say to it, come up with 10 blog posts, you're going to get garbage. If you take the time to show it 2 or 3 of your past blog posts, say, when in doubt, speak like the Atlantic. That's for my own blog. It still doesn't get tone right. What it does really well is generate some blog topics. It'll give me 10 ways to optimize your day and some garbage like that. And I'm like, no. And I'll tell it it's basic. That was cheesy. This crowd is much too intelligent. This is an extremely educated group of people. They're very tech savvy. You need to give us hacks that no one has talked about before. It doesn't know exactly, but that gives it a much better idea that it needs to skip levels 1, 2, and 3 and just give us something real.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's been my experience.
These are all just examples of like how to talk to it, right?
Yeah, when I'm trying to come up with ideas for newsletter topics or blog post topics, I might say, hey, I'm talking to B2B influencers.
That's what I want to ask. How do you use it, Mike? Like, what is your process like? I'm curious.
Right now, that's the most common usage. I'm exploring other things. Like, what else can I do with it? Like any other tool that's just massive. There's so much that I can do that until you come up with the question in your mind. Can I do this? It's really hard to even know. But right now, the thing that I'm doing the most is blog
topic.
post ideas, newsletter topic ideas.
So I have some
I'll
suggestions
brainstorm
for you.
questions for podcasting. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, let's say it's blog post ideas. Everyone and their mother is probably one of the top 5 things that is getting asked to ChatGPT right now, right? So I assume it has like a lot of trained data, and it's, the more people asking the same question, the more generalized, right? Because you're asking for blog topics, but so is a guy who owns like a interior painting store, right? Those are very different. I would almost like give it a fresh take and say something like, I'm speaking at Harvard next week. Write up this fantastical thing. I'm speaking at MIT to a room full of marketing science graduate students, right? They are already users of ChatGPT. What don't they know? What, getting to like another level. Or for you, this is a digital marketing savvy crowd. Giving it a different venue and saying it's a speaker might be interesting. Giving it an assignment to write, it's some package or special thing, because I don't get the best results when I'm just like, give me blog topics.
Yeah.
More like writing a book. I don't know. It's strange how, and that's why I'm doing this coaching, because it's really hard to give just prompts that work for everybody. You really have to like know who you are, what your style is, what your risk tolerance is, and then what you're trying to do. And then people can create templates, right, to work moving forward on their own with this stuff.
I love this idea
So
that
exciting.
not only are you giving them a prompt with a target audience, but you've taken that a step further and said, let's go beyond what I would normally be doing. And let's put myself in a situation that is even more, as you said, fantastical or more professional, or maybe years away from where I'm at today. I am not in a position today to speak to MIT marketers, right? But if I'm creating content that
you want it
talks to
to
that
be
target audience,
right. So
yeah.
I'm sure you're speaking to it exactly each time you do. Same thing with my blog. I know who I'm trying to reach, and that's like college educated English speakers that do not work in tech, right? But they work on computers every day. And I sometimes picture my parents, they're tech savvy, but just a lot of this news blows past them and they're like, weren't we just talking about the metaverse? What the hell is this now, right? So I try to keep that in mind, because we get so deep in the weeds, right? In the marketing, just industry in general, or out in Silicon Valley, that we're all only seeing each other. And so then you end up talking to other people and skipping a whole bunch of steps. I'm also just thinking about, like, if you're an executive that does not work in AI, right, or does not work in social media, how do we make these just tools that make your day easier, faster, get hacks off of your calendar, instead of just like always giving people another thing to do, which is always a theme, right? In the talks is another platform. And I have a lot of empathy for that, because I was a social media marketing, like a director of social media for a while, and just doing posts by hand. That was like before we had Agorapulse or any platforms. So I'd be in a bar, like on Twitter, making sure I was checked in as the brand, and I'd had a couple drinks, and I was like, oh my God, this is terrible, right? Terrible. Things have come really far, and we will with this stuff too.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the motto, don't dress for the job you have, dress for the job you want, right? So I just really love this mindset of changing who you're talking to who you're telling the generative AI tool, whichever one you're using, to talk to, is, you're thinking beyond the audience that you're normally creating content for. You're thinking bigger, better. Like at Agorapulse, Daryl told the story before. For years, we were talking to social media managers because those are the ones who were using our tool, which is great.
Sure.
But then Daryl came in last year and he's like, yeah, but they're not the ones with the budget.
Buying,
They're not the ones
right.
with the buying power. You need to talk to
Yes.
executives,
CMO.
talk to CMOs, which has been an entire mind shift change, which our
I
content
love
team
that.
obviously should have been using ChatGPT a year ago. They might have gotten some help. Okay, ChatGPT, I want to talk to the CMO of Disney. I want to talk to the CMO of SeaWorld, who has a huge team. They've got all these kinds of tools and budgetary issues that they're trying to sort through, but I want to get on their radar. What are some ideas?
Okay, yeah. So I love this. I think that change, that shift that you guys made, and thanks for sharing, because I think that is really intelligent. And now you're speaking boom to a whole new group of people. the things that I would say to a CMO or a leader as opposed to a social media manager would be, just because you're not writing posts every day, don't leave that platform to your people. Like, you can be using this every single day for fun on the side, just like you would check out Twitter, even though you're not managing your handles, Twitter account. The more you do it, the better you're going to get in it. And you can then teach your organization. So you're going to be learning at the same time as the people that you hired in as social media experts. Don't let anyone fool you. Everyone's at ground zero. If they're ahead a little bit, they're ahead a little bit. But this is where I will say this audience's experience is vastly needed. I think the explosion of all of these digital tools has made the workforce very young, and people who were very new took on a lot of responsibility during the past 10 years of growth. I don't think there have been a lot of mentors. I don't think there's a lot of understanding of how to solve business level problems, things that you all have learned through your career. I think there's a time now to marry that back with technology and kind of get back to mentoring people, because you're going to know the platforms as well as they do. And I do make the argument that liberal arts majors, we're back on top, baby, because it is all about having the crispest understanding of your tone, your voice, and your audience. And you all know that better than anyone else in your organization. So, if you want to speak to aquariums in the United States, such as SeaWorld, I would literally go do my Google homework first, just like I always would. I would probably look for any recent press releases of the past year. I would tell it the literal job in this case that is to do. We want to pitch and win an account to break into aquariums, okay, whatever it is. We're talking to the CEO, and they are publicly, you can put the link to their Google results, right? You're not digging up anything new. You're just teaching ChatGPT in this moment to become an expert in what you're trying to do. You have to remind it. Each session is almost like a new world. And so the whole act as you are my assistant to win this bid, you have to tell it that every chat, but you can save chats and continue that conversation. So I would probably say, what are the top 5 things, top 3 things maybe that I should focus on to win this account? Stand by. I will share 3 recent, news or press stories or something like that with you. And you just go, here's number 1, paste, stand by for 2, or it'll go off, it'll start working. And then you course correct it, right? It might start telling you things you already know. I stop it. I'll go stop generating and say, we already know this. I did that homework. Sometimes you have to remind it. And generally, if you're not getting the results you want, you're not asking a targeted enough question. And that's where pretending this is an intern, but an intern that has no idea about, they know about marketing, say, but they don't know how to market to this audience specifically. They will know what you teach them and then become an expert in it on the spot. Imagination. It's a lot of imagination.
Love it. So I've got a question.
Yeah.
If I'm a CMO, there are countless technologies that are out there today. There's new social platforms, there's new industries, new areas of interest and excitement. And clearly as a
We're
CMO,
talking like outside of AI, right? Like the metaverse, NFT.
Yeah. Outside of metaverse, right? Or Blue Sky or Mastodon. Right? But if I'm going to be an effective CMO, I definitely need to be able to speak intelligently about some of those technologies. And there comes a point in the adoption, the evolution of every technology where it's mainstream enough, it needs to be on my radar. Like Blue Sky, I would argue is an easy example that doesn't need to be on your radar if you're a CMO. You don't need to be in there learning how to use it.
You should just know of it. So if you're on a stage and someone says Blue Sky, you're not like, what's Blue Sky? And that's just really like, what's the top 5 of the week, kind of anything new.
Yeah.
Just like a quick scan of news.
But if we strip away all the hype with AI, because there's arguably a lot of hype, but if we strip that away and we just try to think objectively about AI today and where it's going, has it reached that saturation point yet where every CMO should be, like you said, spending a little bit of time inside of ChatGPT or one of the other platforms so that they have a baseline understanding? Are we there yet?
Yes, but I would reframe the question. So the answer is, if we're going to run away out of the building right now, yes, this is where you need to focus your energy. And I would even be more specific and say, use ChatGPT. It has the best front end. Google results are not as good with Bard right now, in my opinion. If you're not doing visuals and video right now, and I think most of us aren't in the weeds on that stuff, ChatGPT. So that clears away some stuff. But here's why. Just like social media, when Twitter first came out, that we thought it was about the platform, right? There's a new platform where I have to say things on that platform, but it's really like kind of a new way of sharing, right?
Yeah.
So tweets were where the media industry ended up, right? That's where you go if you feel an earthquake out here and you're not sure. That's Twitter's my earthquake bot. I'm like, was that an earthquake? To find out like the most recent, but so we know what to go for those things. So social was this big sort of growth. Then with COVID, I think we plateaued a little bit. This is my interpretation of what's happened here. Cryptocurrency and blockchain created this sort of misnomer that the metaverse was going to be where a year ago, that's where all these conversations were going. And one of the reasons I started my blog is because if I were outside of this, I'd be like, now they're talking about AI the way they were talking about the metaverse, right? I just think it's all going to blow over just like that did. My argument is that was a very techie, futuristic look, right, at where things are probably going. So it was not wasted time. You know, if we got super in the weeds, I think we still learned about blockchain, right? NFTs, you're still learning about these things. If you just think of the sheer front-end hardware that you would need to really make it a metaverse first world, that doesn't make sense right now. The big difference between everything with blockchain, NFTs, and metaverse, which I still think is important stuff, is that, do you remember how many times it had to be explained to you, right? The metaverse is a VR, but it's not VR, and it's MR, XR, but it's not. It's about plugging in, but being with the world. And like, I had this metaverse blog for a long time because I was so frustrating to me. Like, what are you even saying? And we ended up telling people the cartoon avatars were flying around a VR world. Versus if you go to ChatGPT and create your account, and if you haven't, that would be the one thing I would say to do. And this weekend you can play with it. It's as easy as Google. If you go on there and ask it, go to my blog and just pick a prompt, right? You don't even have to come up with it, and copy and paste it in there. 10 things, I don't know. I'm going to send you pictures. You can't send it pictures yet, but I'm going to send you descriptions of my style. What do you think I should be buying for fall? It can be personal. It can be related to business, that itinerary thing I told you I'm going to post about. Like, it's as if you had a $200,000 a year executive assistant doing your travel, like back in like the Mad Men days. It's like that. So back to our audience, this becomes instantly understandable by everyone that tries it. I mean, anyone that I've met can at least go, I get it, even if they don't love it or are scared about the direction, a little overwhelmed. Very few people don't understand it, because if you can read and write, you can use the tool. So think about that. Then think about, as we input more data, right? So it's basically taking the corpus of the internet and data since the beginning, since we started like large computing models, and going back and generating all of those pieces into new ways to teach you brand new things, just like brains do. So as we use these tools, we're making the models bigger. It's like Google, it's like Facebook, the Facebook graph, right? Every time you post, you're adding those words, data, information, hashtags, images, and collect it to that world and that corpus of data. This is the same sort of thing as just like the Facebook graph, except instead of just getting, or Google, the results we asked, it's smashing those together like brains do and generating completely unique facts. And if they don't think that's cool, like, I don't know, I mean, that's just wild to me. I get so excited about this stuff. It's totally new.
Yeah, of course, which is why you're here, because it's fascinating how it all
Mhm.
works, and it does take some education for those who feel like they want to or they need to understand why AI is different from, say, Google search. If they need to
Mhm.
understand how it's going to impact their business, it will, and that takes some conversation, which is why you are doing what you are doing. And I
Yeah.
see, really fun folks like, Rand Fishkin on Twitter sharing like the perspective of how AI is going to shift SEO and
Oh yeah.
how, people are
Well, SEO
using,
as a whole, we haven't even.
ChatGPT.
This
Ah,
is where
yeah.
we're as caught up as Sergey, like all we're as caught up as the C-suites of all of these big technical companies. They don't know what this means for Google. So say Google Bard does get as useful utility based as ChatGPT,
Mhm.
and it will. It's just they took a
It
different
will.
approach.
Yeah.
They're more cautious. I think that makes sense, but it'll get improved. Now, when you go in and query AI, what will be the adjacent ads that'll be delivered? Because I mean, that's the model. Unless we come up with a new paid version for Google Bard, it will be an ad model. And as we buy ads against content that doesn't exist yet, right? So you're not like, I want to buy everything about athleisure wear from fall, whatever. You're saying, I want to buy against new things being discussed in the Lululemon category next quarter or something. And that's scary, right? That's just scary. So I don't know how they're going to solve that problem, because it would be like sponsoring me and you don't know exactly what I'm going to say. And you kind of trust that you've given me the right message, but then you have to sit back and buy an ad against whatever I'm going to say right now, right? That's a loss of control, and it's neither good nor bad. It just is different. The changes are happening as we speak, as far as ads go and as far as SEO goes. I mean, if you want to talk about what we can do with SEO, I'm betting you guys have heard before about how you can generate SEO driven headlines. I mean, I can talk about some of that, but that's a lot of stuff that you can find online too.
But yeah, I think the point here is that if you are an agency where SEO is one of your services, where paid ads,
Okay.
Google ad placement are one of your services, this is a conversation you have to be paying attention to
Oh my
because the
gosh, yes.
game is literally changing daily. You've got people who are using ChatGPT right now to inform themselves about whatever topics they're interested in, and there are no links whatsoever in
Right,
that
right, right,
content.
right. Right. And I mean, there's also are people able to do this themselves? And so the value proposition may be a little bit different. So for example, on my Tech Normal blog, what I'll usually do when it comes to titling, I do that sometimes first because it's a good way of getting the topic narrowed down, and then I'll go back to it again at the end and say, give me 10 versions of this headline optimized for Google and social, or Google and Twitter, right? Heavily focused on keywords or something like that. And I usually also say, in a sentence, tell me why you chose that. Because the big thing here is you can't, on Google, you can click through to find the source, right? Of whatever inane thing is being told to you, you're like, what? That doesn't sound right. And then when you get to the bottom, there's like a garbage news site, and you're like, okay, well, that's what, these are misinformed people passing this along. With AI, you don't know why you're getting the result that you're getting. It may be the best
Yeah.
blog post title in the world, but it's a black box as far as what it did. So the least we can get is why. And it'll tell you things like it's basically saying, based on the goals that you told me, this is a good fit. But by explaining it step by step, it's a little bit of a hack. It tends to slow down and optimize its thought process, it seems like. I can't tell you why some of this stuff happens. Honestly, and I thought at first I was missing something. You can learn about large language models, but they don't know that moment of like combustion between concepts that generates a new idea. Just like we don't understand the brain, we don't quite understand the why. And if you ask the same question 10 times in a row, you will get 10 slightly different answers, just like a human would give.
Wow. That I
It's
haven't tried. That's
And
interesting.
yeah, and it's kind of a good thing to do. Give it a basic question like optimize these 10 blog titles, put it in 3 times or 3 different separate chats because it does remember, it like caches memories. So do 3, and you can call it like A, B, and C. I name all my chats, right? Test A, B, and C. And then just go back and see like how wide is that range of what it's giving you, because if it's giving you a wildly big range, right, the first set of headlines are completely non-related to the other set, that sounds like we need to narrow down what we're asking it to do more, because it's just way, you wouldn't be like search the internet for cats, it's just too broad, right?
Yeah.
You know I love my like little analogies, but saying I am looking to adopt a tabby cat, search the internet for tabby cat adoption in the San Carlos, California area, blah, blah, blah. And that's where ChatGPT is still, you got to remember that 2021 rule.
Right.
I don't know the exact month of cutoff. I don't, May maybe. But in any case, that will catch up very soon. This is just a good time to get started. But no, you're going into the front lines. This is like alpha testing a new platform or product.
And that's a great segue to my last question, which is that if you were able to go back in time and give, young marketer Katie advice,
I
or if you
still like
want to
to do that.
reframe it, you could, yeah, I still like to give yourself advice, or just somebody who's just starting in the industry today.
Yeah,
They're fresh out of
it's
college.
a
What
great time to
advice
be
would you
new
give
at
them?
that. Okay. The advice, and this is coming out of almost 10 years out here working in Silicon Valley as well, and like a big tech company that used to say break things, right? You're not going to break these platforms by trying them out. I'm going to push you to just commit to yourself that in the next week, you at least, if you don't have an account yet, you will have an account, right? The prompt empty box, I want to have respect, because when we first saw Google, I mean, a lot of us that are older like can remember this, right? That was intimidating. I don't want to enter the wrong thing. Would you ever now worry about entering the wrong thing? No, you
Yeah.
just adjust your search terms, advanced search, filter it down. This is just like Google. You're not messing anything up. Don't put your client's data in there. Don't stick your social. This is simple stuff you wouldn't do on the internet. But ask it questions and get specific about your life. If you're a writer, have it help you with that. If you're full-time caregiver of children for the weekend, have it come up with 10 things to do outside with a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, or it's raining, give me 10 new ideas. I do the kids stuff a lot. There's an amazing thing where you sit with your kids and tell a story and say, we're going to tell a story together. For a 10-year-old, she likes ponies and princesses. Don't mention anything scary. She will start telling it and then say go, and you will pick up. Keep this G-rated, let's go. And the kid can go once upon a time, blah, 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 and then say go, and it'll pick up and tell, and you can read back to your child like the story. So choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
Live.
That's
So
hilarious.
that's like endlessly entertaining. If you want to start with something easy, like that is fun, and you can do it instead of the kid. Pretend you are the kid and tell the story with them.
That I might do.
Yeah.
But that's great advice. Yeah. Just start using it. You can't
Yes.
break it. Fantastic.
Yeah. And then for young people, I would say there has never been a better opportunity to own your expertise, right? And just own an online voice. So for $10, you can have a domain name for free. You can be on TikTok. And I know, like, being on camera this way is fine, but me hosting my own thing, it feels so strange. And everyone who's got a big voice on TikTok says you get used to it the more that you do it. And so that's what I would say to someone young starting out is you can still be focusing on getting a corporate job while you're becoming a really niche expert in something. And it can be like using ChatGPT as a recent graduate to find jobs and blog your journey, because then the people that are going to come hire you are going to find that stuff cached in like your Google search results.
That is amazing advice. Amazing. Thank you so much,
Yeah, and
Katie.
feel
This
free.
has
I'm
been
going to open
terrific.
this up. If you do have young people getting out of school, I like to do mentoring. I usually have 1 or 2 students I'm working with. So, if there's anyone with a college student that's interested in this stuff, I'm happy to do a call with them.
Fantastic. We've got Katie's
Yeah.
links in the chat. You can click on her
Yeah.
profile, message her, because if you're watching this replay, it's still available for 30 days. And at the top of the hour, we'll be back with our last fireside chat with Miss Milieu Peters to talk about organic social media. See you
My
there.
last thing,
Thanks,
Mike, is
Katie.
just reach
Yeah.
out if you want to talk more about your specific stuff. That's what I'm here for.
Fantastic. Thank you. We'll see you in a little bit.
Bye, everybody.